Senator Brown and Senator Bennett for championing this issue for not this Congress, but for years. Before I came to Washington, these two men were standing up and talking about the moral core of our country. If you want to see how a nation is doing, don't look at the buildings we build, how many billionaires we have. Just look at children. And what is galling me right now is that we have come to the 1 yard line. We are at an inflection point in our country where we have to ask the question, who are we? My friend, Senator Bennett, and I have been working with kids well before we came here, and he rattled off data that should be repeated. I say this is a moral issue, but he has shown this is an economic issue. We are the wealthiest nation on the planet Earth, and of the top 41 countries, we're at 38 in poor kids. And what he pointed out is that poverty costs all of us. It is a deep self-inflicted wound in this society because poverty cost this nation over $1 trillion as measured by economists. But I'm telling you right now, economists don't measure all the things that are important. Our GDP does not reflect well-being. It doesn't reflect how many antidepressants people take or how many child deaths there are. But the truth of our economy is every dollar we invest in getting children out of poverty returns $8 to this economy. So it is an economic issue, clearly. It is a globally competitive issue because the nation in a global knowledge-based society, the nation whose children learn the most will earn the most and will outcompete. It is a national security issue. As we go up against countries like China, whose top 10% of their graduating high school classes outnumber all the children we have virtually. But it is a moral issue most of all. If we are going to create a more beloved community, how do we treat our children? Children who live in poverty literally have physical effects. Poverty is violence. Study after study shows that the brain development of children in poverty is inhibited. Literally, the stress hormones, the cortisol, it is akin to an adult having a traffic accident every single day. It is an indicator of childhood trauma. Poverty is a moral obscenity. And we, the richest nation on the planet, that year after year our rich are getting richer, our children are getting poorer. Who are we? When we pledge allegiance to a flag and say liberty and justice for all, who are we? We don't even know the demographic changes in our country. We have cities across America where 1 out of every 10 child is being raised by a grandparent. And so here we're discussing childhood poverty, and some people are talking about work requirements when we know from the data from conservative think tanks to what we see in other nations like Canada that things like the child allowance, or in our country, the child tax credit, increase workforce participation. But if you get rid of the child tax credit, those grandparents raising grandchildren, half of them plunge back into poverty. And the stories are profound. You heard from my colleague in Colorado. We know families in New Jersey, like a woman I just saw named Margarita. She used her child tax credit payments for exactly what so many said they would be used for. She used them for food. for her children, for school supplies to keep the electricity running in her house. We've heard stories that they're used for a car bill to get people to work. They're used to pay for childcare that they need for their family so that they can work. Families are not using this money so they can quit their jobs. Quite the contrary, they're using them so they can get to work. Mr. President, we are a nation in crisis because of how we treat our children. The child tax credit is a lifeline for the millions of grandparents raising grandchildren. It's a lifeline for low-income children. And so you heard it from Senator Bennett. We are at an inflection point. What will we do right now? Will we extend the child tax credit? Will we make the full refundability permanent? Will we keep people having these monthly checks? That is the policy question, but the question before us really is a moral one. For once and for all, this is not partisan. It's a defining moment for the character of our country. And I say, words are not enough. We should show with the child tax credit the truth in our policies, what we do with our budgets. We should show our love through what we do, not what we say. And the best leading indicator of that will always be how the most vulnerable in our society are doing, how we take care of our elderly, and in this case, how we care for our children. I'm honored to now have come to the floor our senator from Georgia. I would mark, as much as I love the senator from Ohio and the senator from Colorado, the senator for Georgia has a much better haircut. I yield the floor.
Senator from Ohio.